Around the world, attitudes towards the use of cannabis are shifting. Mexico is the government plans to legalize recreational cannabis use, as does the incoming government of Luxembourg. Meanwhile, New Zealand, its leaders, are considering a referendum on what their approach should be. As public opinion and that of government changes, it seems increasingly likely that other countries will follow, raising questions about how they work together to manage the use and the supply of cannabis. What has led one country after another to move toward a relaxation of their laws, and, in many cases, outright legalization? It was only in 2012 that Uruguay became the first country in the world to legalize recreational cannabis use. In large part, the move was aimed at replacing links between organized crime and the cannabis trade with more accountable state regulation. Later the same year, voters in Washington state and Colorado became the first in the US to support legalization of the drug for non-medical use. Under President Barack Obama, a critic of the late war on drugs, the US government stepped back from enforcing federal laws and effectively gave states the green light to explore alternatives. 8 more states and Washington, D.C. have since supported the legalization of recreational cannabis, and the penalties are softening elsewhere. The use of the drug for medical reasons is allowed in 43 of the 50 states. In many ways, the jury is still out on the effects of legalization on society and individuals' health. But there is no question that public opinion and government policy has softened. The tide has crept across the Americas, with Canada legalizing the sale, possession and recreational use of cannabis nationwide in October. That Mexico will legalize marijuana seems a virtual certainty. The new government of Andrés Manuel López Obrador has introduced a bill that would legalize its medical and recreational use, while the country's Supreme Court recently ruled an absolute ban on recreational use unconstitutional. Other countries are pushing ahead. Although the sale of cannabis remains illegal, possession of small amounts is no longer a crime in countries including Brazil, Jamaica and Portugal. In Spain, it is legal to use cannabis in private, while the drug is sold openly in coffee shops. In the Netherlands, still more countries allow the use of medicinal cannabis. Around the world, there are many more countries where change is underway. In many countries, the move towards legalization started with the softening of public attitudes. In the US and Canada, images of sick children being denied potentially life-changing medicines had a tremendous impact on public opinion, a concern that brought forward legalization for medical purposes. A similar softening of attitudes has been seen in the UK. In June, old Billy Caldwell, who has severe epilepsy, was admitted to hospital after his medical cannabis oil was confiscated. A month later, a special license to use cannabis oil was granted to 7-year-old Alfie Dingley, who has a rare form of epilepsy. Following high-profile campaigns, the UK government changed the law to allow doctors to prescribe cannabis products, as United States, such as California, found in the 1990s and the 2000s. Familiarity with medical cannabis can soften attitudes toward recreational use, but in the UK, the Home Office says the recreational use of cannabis will remain banned, although senior figures, including former Conservative leader William Hague, have suggested a rethink. Mexico has also had cases of children being denied medical cannabis, but it has also been motivated by the extraordinary violence of its drug war. Although marijuana makes up a relatively small share of drug cartel revenues, continuing to ban it is seen as increasingly at odds with reality. Mexican diplomats warned the United States it was difficult to enforce the fight against the cannabis when the neighboring American state of California legalized recreational use. With countries worldwide moving towards some form of legalization, others are rushing to catch up. Often, as in many parts of Latin America, governments want their farmers to have access to the potentially lucrative medicinal cannabis markets that are developing. Corporations have also expressed interest. For example, Altria, which owns cigarette brands including Marlboro, has made a $1.86 investment in a Canadian cannabis company. Over time, as the US demonstrates, it is quite possible that the medical trade could quite easily morph into recreational sales, potentially opening up an even bigger market. One immediate obstacle is that cannabis, for recreational purposes, cannot be traded across borders. Countries can only import and export medicinal cannabis under a licensing system supervised by the International Narcotics Control Board. Farmers in countries such as Morocco and Jamaica may have a reputation for producing cannabis, but they cannot access markets that domestic producers sometimes struggle to supply, as happened in Canada following legalization. More stories like this force NHS choices. While there are some rumblings of change within the international legal system, As yet this seems far off. Governments that want to move towards legalization face a challenge, steering a course between uncontrolled legalization and hard prohibition. Poorly regulated industry undermined altering substances are not a combination about which many societies would feel comfortable, but it seems a virtual certainty that more countries will change their approach to cannabis in the coming decades. As such, domestic and international rules will need to catch up about this business analysis. Piece was commissioned by the BBC from an expert working for an outside organization. John Collins is the executive director of the International Drugs Policy Unit at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Follow him at Inside Bill edited by Uncle Walker.